Hello and welcome to another album analysis. In today's video we're taking a look at the latest album to release by the American pop punk band Scooped Up, titled Reruns. This does serve as the follow-up to their 2018 debut album in the form of Dumbass, and they're a band that really pride themselves on doing everything themselves. They're a DIY pop punk band, they produce a lot of their own material, their music videos, everything is very self-sufficient with them in that they actually produce, and they also do something that a lot of other bands around the same genre don't typically do these days. They capture that 90s nostalgic pop punk sound when we first saw the genre really beginning to explode. So if you're a fan of albums such as Twisted by Design by Strung Out, Welcome to Rockville by Less Than Jake, or Dude Ranch by BLINK-182, this is probably an album that you are going to absolutely love. So will this latest offering be a home run, or will it be caught out at first base? Let's take a look at some of the tracks found within. Opening the album we do have Reruns, which pulls us straight into this very quick pace from the get-go, from the guitars, really the drums kicking in as well, just to really provide us with this very sharp, edgy, very fast-paced delivery that really we do see in a lot of pop punk still to this day, but it really has that early sound because of the very garagey sound. They don't overly polish this album. We're going to see that on a number of the tracks that are found within, and it helps to really add to this 90s nostalgic feel by not making it over-polished, not making it too clean, and it's one of the things that really stands out. And despite that, they still include some messaging in this track. It's all about the idea of knowing when to take the fall and not knowing when to start over, when to start that rerun effectively, to go back to the beginning and make those changes and try something different. So it's really kind of great how they've still managed to capture some of these ideal messages in some of these very short tracks, as there isn't a single track on this album that exceeds the 3-minute mark. For track 2 we do have Dislexic, which actually talks about two people not realising they have feelings for each other till it's too late. It's that typical idea of the guy not seeing the signs that the girl's into him, and it's just maybe she's Canadian, maybe she's just being friendly, who knows, but it's just that thing of not looking back or realising until 6-7 years down the line or something like that. So really and then you feel like a complete idiot because you missed something that was so completely obvious. So I really like the messaging they're also including in this second track on the album, but again we see very similar sounds just really coming in with this driving sound. That it's a very short album coming in at 30 minutes, but I like the punchiness and the short elements of many of these tracks. I mean, Dislexic comes in at 1:30. It really just hits you with that short pop punk blast before diving into other songs in the album. For track 3 with Slingshot, we do get to see a very elasticy opening as it does spring from side to side, and we just continue to see this driving sound from many of the instruments. And one thing that also really stands out on this album as well is definitely the vocals, because we do have this almost very snotty, teenage, rebellious sound, and snotty would be quite off-putting, certainly for a lot of more modern musicians, but I like how it kind of captures that 90s sound. If you go listen to early Blink-182 or listen to early Strung Out, you really see the very weird and wacky and wonderful tones they do bring across on the vocals that maybe have shifted slightly over time, but I think those kind of almost off kind of kilter vocals really do help to add to the nostalgia that is found within this album. So in this sense, I actually really like the way it kind of has that nasally tone to it, of just that thing of I'm teenage, I'm rebellious, and you can't really tell me what to do. I'm just kind of, and also invoking that idea of kind of skaters and things like that. You really see that brought in on this album. That is definitely aided quite strongly by the use of the vocals and the styling on them as well. For track 4 we do have Fumble, where we do start to see a bit of a change up in the style with a much grittier sound really coming through the guitars, and I really like that they actually do that on this track. We're not just seeing kind of 14 songs on this album of just complete pop punk that all sound completely the same. They're kind of versifying it from track to track by maybe letting different elements really come in, whether it be the guitar or maybe the drums having a bit more efficiency. But I like the way they're not just kind of making every single song sound the same, despite that was something that we did see quite prevalent in a lot of 90s pop punk. We did see many albums featuring many songs that kind of musically sounded the same, but I like the way they just putting these small elements in to really show this versatility and this diversity, to really kind of stop the album from becoming very stale despite its short nature. Then at track 5 we do have Best Days, which is a song all about kind of feeling nostalgic for the past whilst letting the present slip away. You kind of get so hooked on those old ideas, and I kind of like this song because it really fits in with the theme of the actual album and the sound the band have gone for, with them almost reminiscing on that 90s sound. They're not allowing their best days to kind of slip past them. They're kind of looking back in a fond way on that kind of era of pop punk, and I like again the fact they're kind of throwing back to something like that. They're not copying so many of the pop punk bands fans of this current era, the likes of Neck Deep, that have this much cleaner, more polished sound. So again, we can see that on tracks like this, just that very garagey sound that really comes through, just not showing that they're completely kind of cleaned up everything, and it helps to really just again add to that sound. But I love the way they're kind of touching on the idea of kind of the people that live in the past and kind of let the present slip past them, and because they're not focused on exactly what they're doing in the present, because they're so busy thinking about the better days that are behind them. Next up, we do have the shortest track on the album in the form of M80, and we do see the lovely opening lyric of skateboarders can go F themselves. I really just love that little punchy little bit they did throw in. And one of the things I love about this is the shortest track on the album at 1 minute 17. One of the lyrics in this is actually running out of things to say to you, so I love the fact that it kind of fits in with the idea they've really incorporated in the lyrics. This idea of just, I don't really have anything to say, so I'm going to keep the song super short, super sweet, and just again, just really just showing this constant little blasts as they kind of interweave in between these different tracks to continue to show us something slightly different. But I really just love the very short, snappy pace that really fits in, especially aided by those lyrical themes. It kind of stops it from just being kind of 1 minute of just nothing, or 1 minute that's quite flat. We do continue to race through the album with songs such as Joyride and Foolproof, which again just show something a little bit different. We just see this racy pace still being driven through. They really do give it everything they've got. And on Foolproof, we do see a more drum heavy sound as well, with these sharp, snappy tones continuing to drive through the album. Just really just continue to show that constant pace. They never really kind of take their foot off the gas. They just keep driving and ploughing through. And I'm kind of glad that we don't see a pace drop on this. With it being such a short album, I do feel that if they kind of had one song that really dropped the pace, it would kind of kill the vibe that you're really getting. You want this to be a 30-minute blast of you doing something very energetic, kind of throwing yourself around, getting a bit crazy, and that's exactly what this does. So it doesn't really kind of spoil the kind of journey we're being taken on with many of these tracks as we continue to move through into songs such as Crash Test and Shoelace as well. We just see this consistent pop punk kind of upbeat vibe that really just kind of gets drilled into your ears. Slightly later in the album, we do have the track Slacker, which opens with "What's the point when everything just goes to shit?" So really just again fitting with the lyrical themes in the title of this track. They're just kind of slacking things off, because you think, what's the point? There's no point in putting any effort into anything, but you can really see the effort the band have put into this album with many of the choices that they have made, not only just in the lyrical, but all the musical choices as well. And I really do appreciate the way that they kind of again just constantly showing these slight switch ups with just little bits and pieces taking different prevalence, especially on other tracks where we did see the drums and the guitars, maybe the bass coming in, just to really kind of mix up and diversify the album. Even with it being kind of 14 tracks, we're not seeing the same thing over and over again. And I like again just how some of these short, snappy lyrics really just do fit in with the theme that we are seeing from some of the tracks that are provided. For track 13, we also have Bummer, the one track on the album that really switches things up. Before we get to the end of the album, we do see that switch into an acoustic styling, but they don't drop the pace. They keep the quick pace, which I really do like, despite them kind of just showing a slightly softer element from the kind of very in-your-ears driven sound that we have had across the rest of the album. So I really did enjoy this slight switch up, but keeping the pace going just to really show something slightly different. So nice to see them kind of not just having 14 songs that are all the same, just throwing that one little curveball in at the end just to show something a little bit different. Then we do move into Lightheaded to close out the album. We get one final pop punk blast to close the album out, and it just really just shows on this just really how much they can pack into 27 minutes of just pop punk nostalgia, just really invoking these 90s sounds. Again, that idea of the very snotty, nasally vocals that really come through that I really enjoy, and the kind of just the tones it really brings across, and then kind of combining that with the very fast pace that we do see. It's something that was very prevalent on Twisted by Design, and I really like the way they kind of emulated that speed that really comes through. It's much quicker than some of the other pop punk albums that we did see in the 90s, and also that unpolished sound as well, which I think really does aid them in providing that nostalgic feel, and that's what I love. I think for many people that want to go back, they've heard the Dude Ranch 100 times, they've heard that album so many times over and over, and you want something new, but you want something that sounds older to really just add to that repertoire, and I think the band do a perfect job of really invoking that feeling for old pop punk fans, or will do when you hear this album, because of the way they've managed to build and craft that old sound so cleverly and have done it so very well on this album. Overall, I do think this is a very impressive showing from the band. I do love that 90s pop punk sound, but I've heard some of those albums over and over and over, and they don't kind of have that newness to them anymore. They kind of have become a bit jaded because I've heard them that many times. So it's so nice to have something new that also sounds so old that I can add to that collection when I'm in the mood for that 90s pop punk sound. So it's great to see the band capturing that essence so very well. And if you are a fan of some of the albums I mentioned a little bit earlier on, so things like Twisted by Design, things like Dude Ranch or Welcome to Rockville, you really do need to give this album a listen because it will just really invoke that feeling for not just me, but I'd imagine many others, and will be an album they will be adding it to their repertoire of things they love to listen to when they're feeling like some 90s pop punk. Overall, I'm going to give this album a 7.5 out of 10. I love the way they have captured that nostalgic essence of 90s pop punk. I think a couple of areas where they could have possibly slightly improved. I would have liked to have seen maybe a couple of tracks be a slight bit longer. I mean, songs like Shoelace at 1:29, you just really start getting into it, and then before you know the song has ended, you move straight onto the next one. I won't want to see them expand on it too much. I won't want to start to see the album creep up towards 50 minutes, but maybe just add maybe 5 minutes or so on, just something like that. Maybe add an extra 30 seconds to some of these tracks because you just really get involved in them, and then that's it. They're just kind of cut off very abruptly. And maybe also see a bit more the continuation of the variation they're showing with many of the different instruments taking prominence in the mix. A bit more experimentation, a bit more kind of widespread sound in the album, but I still think it's a very impressive showing from the band in the way that they have captured that sound so very well. So there we have it, the band have certainly managed to pull off a home run with this latest album, but I would love to know your thoughts about this album in the comments section below. Give it a listen first and then let me know what your thoughts are. If you'd like to find more information out about the band as well, I will post links to their socials in the description of this video. And if you'd like to see more content like this overall, then please do feel free to subscribe, and I will see you in the next album analysis.